Okay, now we are going to have Reverend Marianne Macklin come up and give us a story for all ages.
I have some friends who are going to join me for the story for all ages, if you'd like to come. Once upon a time, or in real time, there was a Zen Roshi, and a learned man came to visit the Roshi. Oh, he'd been studying Zen for many years. He had gone to the archives, to the rare book collections, at the library, and looked it up. He'd gone to TikTok,
Facebook.
Facebook
Live.
Facebook Live, everything he knew about Zen. And so he began to tell the Zen Roshi, the learned one from the Zen tradition, what he knew. And there was so much he knew. And the Zen Roshi began pouring the tea. They were gathering for tea and poured the tea, and he continued. And the Zen Roshi poured more tea and more tea. And then he noticed, like, wait, you're pouring, there's tea going all over the place. Oh my gosh, it's all spilled.
It's
And
spilled.
he just didn't know what to
I
think.
don't know what to think of this.
Are you even a Zen Roshi? You can't pour a cup of tea? The Zen Roshi said, you have come here to learn, but how can I teach if your cup is already full to the running over? And that is a story for all ages. I would like to take the time to invite you into what I would call a sacred pause, a time of meditation. And it's been a heck of a week. And I know we come here with our hearts broken with the violence that has happened, the death of Renee Good at the hands of ICE, what is happening in Venezuela, what portends to be happening when a leader says it will be my moral compass that will decide how we do in a democracy. And so we come here with a lot, but also we come here with our hearts. What in the Buddhist tradition, our goodness. But we need tools for this time, I would say spiritual tools. And part of that is just taking a sacred pause now and then. I like movement meditation. I'm going to give you a real basic one today because there's a longer version of this, which I will teach you at some point, but I just felt like this one is, you can do it anywhere, anytime. You could just even be standing and not even go through it, but do it. And it's from the Shambhala, the Tibetan tradition. So for those of you who'd like to stand and join me, it's pretty simple. It begins with just a grounding, and you can lean over or you can just put your hands by your side. But I lean over, and the first word is simply earth. And you connect with the earth, you honor Mother Earth, and you just feel that relationship that you have as one of her children. So your hands are out, honoring Mother Earth. And then as you stand back up, you slide your hands up to the top of your thighs, and then you look forward, because now you are looking at life as it is, and you say in your heart, courage. Courage. And then you just step out a little bit. This is where you just kind of feel lightness, and your eyes go up just a little bit. You just look at reality, but you come into that place of sacredness and you say, calm, abiding. Calm, abiding. So we'll do that together. It's just so simple and it's so grounding and wonderful, and it just reminds you of everything. So we start by saying, and on the say, and we say together, earth,
And we honor the earth, our connection as her children, and all that she gives us. You slide your hands up.
We look at reality as best we can, and we say together, courage. And then you just kind of feel that, almost like you're lying back into the sacredness. You look up and say, calm, abiding. We say together, calm, abiding. Thank you. So wonderful pause, and I've been using it a lot recently. In my introduction that I sent out for the newsletter, I said we're going to take a journey and exploration of today of Zen Buddhism, spaciousness, emptiness. The emptiness comes from our professor who came with a very full cup. And a lot of times, if we're open to new learning, the cup has to be empty. And also there is emptiness in our lives sometimes when we've had to let go of old ways of seeing the world, ways we thought perhaps our democracy would hold us, and maybe what we need to do to step into that place. I said I'd be using mountain climbing as a bit of a metaphor, and I can assure you I'm not a mountain climber. I've backpacked some mountains, particularly in Vermont, where my spouse is from, and even then I wasn't very good. Yeah, I'm just not, that's not it. I like water. But my spouse is a mountain climber or a backpacker, so I do go. And I said I wanted to introduce you into a docudrama, one of my favorites from a wintry mountain climb. Some of you may know this. Have you ever heard either the book or the docudrama Touching the Void? Has anybody heard of that? Oh, that's nice, because I'm going to tell you a story. And I will use that story. It's one that comes back to me probably more than any story I've read. And there's something about the whole visual, and it's true, of what happened to these two mountain climbers. So I'm going to begin with part one. I'm going to give you little pauses in between, and maybe, I hadn't thought of this, maybe we'll do the earth, courage, calm, and abiding between those. So I'm going to ring the bell and start with part one. I'm going to call this Zen. When we experience loss in our lives, whether it's the loss of expectations about how we think things were going to be in our life or in our country, in our world, a sense of emptiness can overpower our sense of gratitude. And gratitude is certainly a spiritual practice. A space that was filled, whether in our lives or hearts, is now void, and the feeling can sometimes be difficult to bear. Too often we find ourselves trying to fill that void or emptiness before we get a chance to see it as a potential path for opening. So it's like, oh, there's this emptiness, and we do things right away to try to fill it up. To foster a balance between acceptance and gratitude, we need moments of quiet reflection. We need to breathe and allow. Today's worship service has been designed to include those moments of silence and grounding throughout. So may we find gratitude and awareness, allowing that to balance us throughout the life. Finally, this word about Zen from Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, perhaps represented today by Stacy. The secret of Zen is just two words: not always so. And that's what Zen does, because that was three words.
Yes.
And Zen is always trying to get us out of our habits, right, of ways of seeing the world, so that we might get more into a beginner's mind. And if you're like that, change is easier, even the difficult change, because you're more open. You aren't holding on to that way of seeing it. And believe me, I want to hold on to the way I've seen things and the way I've understood them. But I have a full cup. That's why I'm a preacher. I like to teach all the things I know. but I have also learned I've got a long way to go. So I'm going to invite us into a pause before I begin the story. I'll ask you to stand as you choose. And we'll begin with Earth. Slide our hands up. Courage. And feel the sacred. And say together, calm, abiding. Seated. Second part of this is called void. As I mentioned, there is a docudrama on PBS from a while back, but I watch it every once in a while, Touching the Void. It's about two mountain climbers, Joe and Simon, who climb a not too far summited 21,000 feet peak in the Peruvian Andes. Now, the way they climb is alpine style. Aside from their base camp at the bottom, they are on their own on this glacial climb. So there's this little base camp and then they climb. They reach the pristine summit. They actually get there. But on the way back down, tragedy strikes. Joe falls and breaks his leg, which is by most standards a death knell under such conditions. He expects Simon to leave him and save his own life. Simon does not. He actually creates a way to slowly lower Joe down the precipitous mountainside 300 feet at a time. So he locks himself in, and then he's got Joe, he's made a little thing, and he kind of just lowers him down. And then he unhooks himself from where he is stable and goes and does this over and over. At one point, Joe just starts to slide because they can't see far enough, and he goes off a cliff. So there's Simon holding the rope, and Joe has gone over the cliff and is dangling. Simon is acting as an anchor up there on the mountain, and due to Joe's dead weight on the other end, if Simon begins to move, he is in danger of sliding off the mountain himself. I think you can probably picture this, right? They cannot see or hear one another because of the winds and snow. I mean, this is just a really terrible situation. Neither of them can move. The night has arrived. The temperatures then begin to plummet. After an hour or so, frozen in his position, Simon has to make a difficult decision. And so he finally cuts the rope linking him to his companion. Otherwise, he would have frozen in place. So Joe falls and he goes into a crevasse, which is a glacial opening. A deep fissure, a dark abyss in the ice. Simon knows his friend, or he certainly assumes his friend is dead, and he creates a snow cave finally for himself, at least to get through the night. He must deal with his life and death decision to cut the rope that night on the rest of the climb down and the rest of his life. But remarkably, Joe survives the over 150 feet fall. He finds himself on an ice ledge in the dark emptiness of this deep crevasse. As night ensues, the darkness deepens, and Joe spends a maddening night of pain and suffering down there on the ice ledge. In the morning, Joe can see the light above, way up there from where he fell. And he knows now that Simon has gone. Even though Simon went all over that area yelling for him, whatever, he could not hear him. After securing an ice screw in the wall with his rope, he tries to find holding so he can climb out. But this is a glacial wall. It just won't permit it. Every time he does it, it just breaks and doesn't go. He's frostbitten. He has a broken leg. He suffers from hypothermia. Joe refuses to spend another night on the ledge. In his words, I wasn't going through that madness again, but I cringed from doing the only thing left to me. Without deciding, I took some of the coils in my hand and threw the rope to the right. In this action, Joe decides to lower himself further into the dark. That's the decision that is hard to imagine, because he's going into an indefinite void beneath him. He knows that if there is an empty space at the end of his rope, he will not be able to climb back out at all, even to that ledge. So he leaves the end of the rope unknotted. As he lowers himself into the unknown, his sense of dread intensifies. Nearly paralyzed with fear, he recalls, inside I was screaming to stop, but then he just kept lowering himself into the emptiness. He said time felt like an eternity. To his astonishment, he finds the end of the rope lying on snow beneath him. There actually is something there. He lowers onto this platform of snow, which he soon discovers is not solid ground. You can see all the metaphors developing here, right? But a snow shelf with dark emptiness below it. He glances to the side and he sees a small shaft of light coming down across the snow shelf from a hole above and to his right. I guess it'd be that way. So he's down in the mountain. This isn't the top. This is off to the side. He decides to risk climbing across the groundless snow shelf, hearing pieces of snow break off and fall below as he slowly goes across. After many, many hours, remember he's got a broken leg, of careful, painful climbing, he finds himself at that small, sun-filled hole. He pops his head through and somehow emerges from the crevasse. And he said this, I love trains. I mean, I really do. The ring of mountains surrounding the glacier was so spectacular that I hardly recognized what I was seeing. The familiar peaks had taken on a beauty I had never noticed before. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the sun glared its azure emptiness and ferocious heat. And that is the story of touching the void. I choose to be in a sacred pause time of meditation. With these images in our head, we lean over and we say together, Earth, connecting to the earth. We come up, hands on the thighs, look into reality, and say together, courage. And then we lean back, open to the azure skies, and we say together, calm, abiding. This fourth part I call now. Now, what is all this talk about emptiness and lowering down, groundlessness? What does it have to do with us today, here, in 2026, our journey, our spirituality? I'm now going to turn to the American Buddhist nun. Some of you may have heard of her, Pema Chodron, who studied with a Tibetan Buddhist master. In her book, The Places That Scare You, A Guide to Fearlessness in Difficult Times, great title, she addresses that time in our lives when we discover that we no longer quite get the same comfort from the things that used to give us comfort. There are times in our lives, she says, like eating pizza or maybe watching a video. It could be anything. Not that those things can't still be pleasurable, it's just, it doesn't fill that emptiness. It's just that they don't always deal with the type of suffering and emptiness we eventually encounter in life. Chodron states, if we've just learned that perhaps we've found out we have a terminal condition, then eating a pizza just doesn't cheer us up. Or if someone that we loved has just died or walked out, the other places we go for comfort sometimes feel feeble, even ephemeral. I kind of had that feeling this Christmas. Some people did, some people didn't, but there was a part of me that I just never felt fully in, even the holiday spirit, a little bit winter solstice, I think I got there, but Christmas felt just a little ephemeral. Did anybody else have a sense of that? I have talked to other people, just with everything going on in the world, there was just this background that didn't let me fully land in it. So we do learn that some of the immediate short-term pleasurable things we used to turn to in order to deal with our suffering, and it could be anything, eating, me overworking, for some people, drugs or computers, certainly social media, all these type of things. But what we find, if it's not, it actually leaves us emptier than where we started. We also may know about the joyfulness of awakening when we begin to learn to trust the openness of our minds, hearts, and the openness, unpredictable uncertainty of life. That sounds like such an easy sentence. Oh, let's just open our minds and be open to the uncertainty of life. But sense how we're all feeling now, or some of us are, with all the uncertainty that is happening in this country. It's not easy, and there is a part of us really wanting to cling to the way things were. My spouse and I have started watching the Waltons again. I think that's our clinging. There we are. There's grandpa, grandma. Okay, we're good. Pema Chodron teaches that most of us, and not all of us, but I'd include myself here, are in some type of in-between state. We're almost open to, our minds are opening, we're letting go, we're doing all these things. We're trying to be open to the uncertainty. It's a place of groundlessness, and that is not bad. It's kind of when like Joe was going across and he could feel the snow kind of falling beneath him. You're aware of the crevasse and the void emptiness within. You've been there, you know you might return, and you're aware of that sun-filled hole, and really just that amazing piece of nature or sacredness, however you experience that in your life. We know there's that place. Joe said the familiar peaks had taken on a beauty I had never noticed before. There wasn't a cloud in the sky, and the sun glared from its azure emptiness with ferocious heat. That azure emptiness, I believe, is what some Buddhists refer to as deep seeing. You've let yourself go down far enough that that part opens that can see more deeply. I think it is a bit like calm abiding. We see reality how we picture it, and then there's also the absolute sacredness and interconnectedness. Some call it, when our mind is able to open that much, luminous emptiness. It doesn't push away suffering, but it sees how suffering creates itself sometimes. So it is about that letting go and letting go of expectations. Part of the path to deep seeing, luminosity, emptiness is meditation. And it can be as simple as earth courage, calm abiding. Sometimes people tell me emptiness is just too much for me to understand. And that's kind of from a Zen perspective, particularly, that's part of the point of emptiness. Again, Sangya Mifan Rinpoche says, we're not supposed to understand it, really. It transcends the extreme views of existence and non-existence, both and neither. This emptiness is inseparable from the wisdom inherent in our own mind and being. It has a radiance, and that radiance is compassion within. In the same way, the sun shines inseparable from the empty space it inhabits. This suchness, this nature of all, the basic goodness, is simply what is in our lives. Again, while I certainly have known this type of emptiness, I have not developed the discipline to stay there. And that probably in and of itself is a paradox. I tend to hang out in the paradoxical in-between, along with so many spiritual seekers. This in-between state is marked by tenderness, it's marked by heartbreak, it's marked by anxiety,
So our task, as I see it, is to learn to just get used to being on that groundless shelf of snow a little bit more. And what I love about a congregation is we can help each other when it gets a little tough for us being there by ourselves. In some ways, we're by ourselves, again, it's paradoxical like Joe, but in some ways we have one another. Pema Chodron says the challenge is to stay in the middle rather than buy into struggle and complaint, which is a bummer because I love to complain about things. The challenge is to let it soften, and that's where I really begin to understand it. The challenge is to soften us rather than make us more rigid and afraid. I was talking to Sherry about that this morning. It's like there's a part of me just suffering right now with an issue that's going on in my life. And I found myself softening, and I go like this. And I go into I feel my energy do that, right? Oh, protect my heart. I was getting some body work done the other day and I just started crying and I literally took my hands. Not like that. And then as I cried, they opened again. And oh, that felt so good for my heart. And it felt good to my being because I had been going around unbeknownst to me like this. It takes a lot to stay in that middle place, but what comes out of it is compassion. It's that place for the soul, to me, the great spirit to come forward. By not knowing, not hoping to know, says Pema Chodron, and not acting like we know what is happening, because I sure usually don't. I can talk about it afterwards and kind of figure it out. That's where we find that inner strength. And we are taught so much in this society to be this person. We have to know, we have to know, we have to know. Unitarian Universalists are taught that. In my former congregation, every once in a while, I go, we're going to practice some things, probably the hardest spiritual discipline you'll ever have. And I have everybody say together, we don't know. They're like, no. So let's practice this. I'll say 1, 2, 3, and we'll all say together, we don't know. 1, 2, 3.
We don't know.
That's tough. It's tough for me. Because we do know some things. I think it's what it's saying is, let's go to that deeper knowing. For me, I see it as embracing the paradox that is our humanity. There is the interconnected beauty, sacredness of everything. And then there are we small humans with our strengths and weaknesses and limitations and love and compassion and tripping and bumbling. And so if we can forgive ourselves by practicing a tender heart, first with ourselves, accepting ourselves, particularly when we experience difficult emotions. I love reading those things because it sounds so simple. Let's accept ourselves when we're having difficult emotions. Wow, is that hard to have a tender heart in those moments? And I think there are times when we need another person, literally, with us. Some of the indigenous traditions teach that there are some emotions we need that other person kind of either have their hand on our back or whatever to go through some of those. Again, the gift of congregation. We do not need to make others wrong or blame them. We also do not need to repress our feelings and beat ourselves up for not being loving about everybody. The practice is to stay with that uneasiness, but with a tenderness in our heart, softening into ourselves. It's like if the Roshi had become part of the teacher and just come over and given him a big hug. That's what we want to do, or have somebody do for us. Chodron often says to try to have a joyful curiosity about our experience. Joyful pushes it a little bit for me, but I can develop curiosity. Our practice is to stay with the uneasiest and not solidify our views. Meditation helps with that. For those of us who experience anxiety, we soften into that. It doesn't completely go away, of course, but it finds a tender place in our heart, and that is the beginning I did that recently and I had this vision, and there are 4 chambers of the heart that, and one of them just grew flowers, you know. And the other, the other one had this very, very beautiful kind of orange red elixir. There are just these things that began to be tender. And that's that staying in the middle, being tender with ourselves. It's being with the raw nakedness of our present moment, says Pema Chodron. And how do we learn all of that when it seems to really go against the grain of human nature? So Chodron proposes 2 things, and she actually gives 2 things because she's a Tibetan Buddhist, not a Zen Buddhist. So she's not trying to do things as much with your head as just say, hey, gentleness, gentleness, take gentle care. And a sense of humor is the other thing she says. And she said the one instruction she says is you just pretend like you're training a puppy in your mind, and you go, stay, stay, stay. Because if we train that dog cruelly, they might end up obedient, but they won't be flexible. They'll be terrified. We want a dog to be flexible, confident, and so it can deal with situations that are unpredictable and insecure. And we have a puppy just like that right now. We do. He's 75 pounds too. So there's a lot of stay going on. With our own minds, we feel restless, right? We sit down to meditate and you're like, I have an itch behind my ear and all this. And you go, stay, stay. I might myself, because I'm so kinesthetic, do earth, courage, calm, abiding. Then I get back. But I'm worried about tomorrow. I'm scared about that, blah, blah, blah. I hate it when I get worried. Oh, why do I have to be so fearful? Should I be in a place of love? Why can't I get there? Stay, puppy. Stay. Breathe. Yeah, but my hip hurts and my neck's a little sore. And I had that injury from basketball the other day. And oh my gosh, I can feel my heartbeat. Puppy, puppy, puppy. Stay. Stay. Breathe. I wonder if there's going to be snacks after church, because my stomach is growling. And hey, are we going overtime? Uh-oh, I can't stand this moment. Stay, stay, and breathe. As we prepare to part from here today, I leave you with those 2 thoughts: gentleness and a sense of humor, you know, in those vulnerable places in our hearts. I think these 2 things are the parents of the twin treasures of gratitude and acceptance. So if you have that gentleness with yourself, sometimes it's more of a cosmic sense of humor, like how the heck do we get here? You know, just something like that. We can find gratitude, which I think is one of the greatest elixirs, as well as awareness. I think that was in our opening words today. And so we can claim for ourselves gratitude and awareness, resting on the forming edge of our lives. May we all find those times where we can be open to the present moment, knowing that we are both the knowledgeable person and the Roshi. It's all in us. It's right there. Our cup's all way filled over. We can also empty it out. We can allow spaciousness and silence to be our friends. And I'll have one final time of sacred pause. There's a lot here, so you're gonna maybe flowing to running over. But let's just let all of that go down into, as we say together, Earth. Honoring our relationship with Mother Earth, coming to her as her children. We slide our hands up on our thighs and we look at the world as it is today together. And we say together, courage. Courage. Now we let ourselves be in that sacred place
Joe coming to that place of light. Not at the top of the mountain, but just right there. And we say together, calm abiding. It is such an honor to be here. I thank you so much. I thank you so much. Roshi?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now for the closing words. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.